Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike Viscuso. I'm our co-founder and CTO of Carbon Black. Prior to founding Carbon Black, though, I was a hacker. I was a hacker for the NSA and the CIA. And during that time, I learned one pretty key lesson. And that lesson was the endpoint is king. And the endpoint was king because ultimately, with access to that endpoint, I could pretty much carry out just about any mission that my boss asked me to do. So if I got access to one of your desktops or laptops or servers, I could pivot from there and pretty much accomplish just about anything I wanted to. And so I guess it's no real surprise that when I founded a security company, it would be an endpoint security company. So right now we have about 3,000 customers. We protect almost 10 million devices worldwide. And we have a great list of just reputable brands as customers, like Google and Facebook, Twitter, Uber, and so many others. And part of the reason why these highly trusted companies trust us with their endpoint security is just the breadth of our security portfolio. So what you see up here is actually three key products that solve three of the hardest problems that everybody faces on the endpoint. The first is application control for your servers, critical systems, fixed function devices. So if you have ATMs, point of sale, healthcare imaging devices, that product's CB protection, and you should think of it like a turnstile. So if it's not approved, we just don't allow it to run, period, end of story. The second one is the incident response product for threat hunting and security operations centers. It's called CB Response. And you should think of it like the digital equivalent of a surveillance camera, allowing you to pretty much go back in time and see what happened no matter what the system state is today. And then the last one is our next generation antivirus product. It's called CB Defense. And this is probably what I'm going to talk about for the majority of my limited time up here. You can think of it like the digital equivalent for your endpoint for credit card fraud prevention. Okay, so how many people before Mike and Ryan talked about WannaCry had heard of it or dealt with it 2 weeks ago? Okay, a lot of people. Okay, so for those of you who didn't raise your hand, it affected about 300,000 people, cost about anywhere from $300 to $600 to remediate. And the big problem is that although it wasn't really any different than any other ransomware attack that we'd seen in the past decade, the antivirus industry actually took 4 days to respond to this attack. And the reality is that 4 days is just unsustainable. We can't simply rely on 4 days to respond to the next attack. So what are we going to do about it? So in 2007, on the underground marketplace, a stolen credit card would go for about $300. And if you fast forward to 2015, the cost of that very same stolen credit card would actually go down from $300 all the way down to $5. Right, so credit card fraud prevention has had a significant impact on the underground economy of stolen credit cards. In fact, a 98.3% reduction because ultimately attackers didn't feel like they could make much money off of stolen credit cards anymore. And we all really know why, right? Pretty much everybody in this room, I'd be willing to bet, has gotten a text message like this from their credit card provider that said, hey, we think there's something going on within your account. But the real question is, how many people actually remembered the old days when you actually got your credit card statement, you looked through it, and you found your own fraudulent transactions? Everybody remember that? Yeah, that didn't really work that much, and the credit card companies were losing a ton of money, so they decided, you know what, we got a great idea. We're going to actually do this for our customers. We're going to have a team of people that do a daily report, and we're going to figure out what credit card transactions were fraudulent ahead of our customers, and we're going to get ahead of that. And what they found is that these attacks happened in bursts. And so even though they did it daily instead of you doing it monthly, they still lost the same amount of money. And so they needed something that actually happened in real time credit card fraud prevention. So let me tell you a little bit about how that works. They record all the transactions, and then when a new transaction comes in, they compare it against all of your previous transactions, and if it's statistically similar, they let it go through, and if it's not statistically similar, they block it, right? Credit card fraud prevention. This actually had a pretty big impact on the industry, but really it's the last piece of this that had the biggest impact. When you talk about why is the credit card used to be $300, only $5 today. It's this piece where they used those blocks to be able to identify cards that were going to be used in future attacks but hadn't yet. So everybody knows Target, big breach. This is how they found that out. And so the impact to Target and the credit card processors was minimal because they saw the first few and classified the attack to predict what the next thing was going to be, what the next wave of credit cards was going to be compromised. And they went out ahead of it and they sent everybody their own new credit card. And this is exactly how Carbon Black is revolutionizing the endpoint security space through next generation antivirus. The old model, you would scan and you'd look at files and you'd try to say, hey, is this file good or bad? The new generation actually looks at behavior, it looks at activity, and says, hey, does this look like ransomware? Because if it is, I don't really care whether it's executing out of PowerShell or it's executing out of a new binary. It looks like ransomware. It has to actually do a particular set of activities in order to ransom your device. And so this real-time event stream processing allows us to prevent way more attacks than anybody else, because we classify these attacks through this stream to be able to identify the next WannaCry well before the attacker actually exhibits that new code. And so as you might imagine, since the credit card fraud prevention space reduced the cost or the opportunity from something like 300 all the way down to 5, 98% reduction, we're actually seeing the exact same reduction in attacks against our system. So we're seeing 99 to 100% reduction in your time, your effort, your cost, and ultimately, your risk. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'll see you afterwards.